Good morning, everybody. I just wanted to give you a little bit of information about your final experiment research paper and make sure I clear up the confusion that seems to be going on. I have placed you in groups with people who want to do the same method of breaking dormancy. So now that you are in your groups and I have created your experimental groups on Blackboard, you can get into those groups and you can do all of your discussions via that rather than on the main discussion board page. So from here on out, you're going to be working in that group rather than on the regular discussion board until the final, when you'll kind of present your final thoughts on it. But within your groups, you are coming up with a hypothesis together about what you want to test. And the idea here is that all 5 or 6 of you are going to do the same experiment so then you can share your data with each other and compare your results. I don't want to see each member of the group doing separate portions of an experiment. Whatever you decide to do for your experiment, everybody needs to do the entire thing. So it's not dividing work up between each other. This is just collaboration to come up with a hypothesis and an experimental setup. So all 5 or 6 of you in your group, I think everybody has at least 5 people. Some groups have 6. You will all be doing the same thing. That actually makes it easier for you as you go through the steps. If you were to have any issues or something went wrong, you would have someone to compare those things to. So that is the idea behind the project. You need to work together in your groups now to come up with a hypothesis and an experimental setup. You need to have choose someone to be your recorder, and then they are going to write that up in a Word document. It's no specific format, but you just need to email that to me before you can move forward. I will give you the go-ahead, or I will have you fix whatever needs to be fixed. That should clear that part up for you. I hope that helps. If that doesn't, then you need to get in contact with me individually. Either call me or you need to post in the discussion board. I'll periodically check in on your group discussion boards, but if you have a question for me, make sure it goes into the questions for instructor discussion board so that I can see it as well as your classmates can see that. I'm just looking here at the guidelines. I want to make sure that I hit everything that you need to do. Within your final lab report for your final research paper is essentially the exact same thing that you're turning in for the formal lab reports each time we do a lab. However, this one is just going to be far more extensive than the ones you're turning in each module. So you're still going to have an abstract section, the introduction, which will include your hypothesis, materials and methods or materials and procedures, results and analysis, discussion, and references. So you're going to have 6 sections, and those are the only 6 sections you should have, whether it's on your formal lab report or on this final experimental research paper, okay? I will read over a rough draft of your paper at the end before you turn it in, which I highly recommend you turn in your rough draft, because I made extensive notes on people's last semester, and really it made a big difference in their final grade on that paper. Otherwise, you don't turn in very good assignments for this big thing if you don't get it checked by me first. So make sure you take advantage of that. Your abstract is going to be a brief summary, but there are some specific guidelines that we'll follow when we write that. And as we get closer, I'll fill you in on that. Your introduction section, this is I want to say it's the bulk of your paper. You want to use this section as though your reader, who primarily is going to be me, you want to pretend that I have no clue what you're talking about. I know nothing about seeds. I know nothing about germination. I know nothing about dormancy. You need to be explaining that information as though your reader does not know anything. That's going to be the bulk of your paper. Now, you just turned in a research assignment. That information is what will be used in your introduction section. So I have just given you an assignment that is going to carry over and be the bulk of your final paper. So all of that research you did is going to help you write this introduction section. So I would highly recommend, some of you actually wrote it essentially already. You have kind of done your introduction section already. So I would be using your time through the semester to come back to that material and put it in paragraph form. It should be in paragraphs. There should be more than one. And it should be in full sentences. Make sure that you are using in-text citations. That is extremely important. Know where your information came from. And then you also need to include in this introduction section the purpose of the experiment. Why is it being performed? Why do I need to know about it? And then you will also include your hypothesis at that point. Okay, so that's your bulk of your paper right there, I would say. Following that, you have your materials and methods section. This is to be written in paragraph form, and you need to I want to make sure I tell you right. You need to make sure that you are not using you and I and we and us. Okay, don't use anything like that, because you are writing the paper as though it was in a scientific journal, and that's not how they would write it. So you don't want to use any of that. So yeah, you're writing in the third person or the past tense, and it should be so clearly stated that I could actually set the same exact experiment up that you did and then perform it. So that's what that section needs to look like. Following that, you're going to have the results and analysis. This section is very straightforward. You are just writing out literally the results, what you got, and some analysis of that, but you don't want to discuss what it means. So you're going to tell me, Group A plan, screw this much. Group B plan, screw this much. Group C plan, screw this much. So there was more growth in this group, da-da-da-da-da. And then you'll use the discussion section to talk about why that happened and what it means for us. Okay, but in that results and analysis section, you're going to have tables, figures, graphs, photographs, anything that is important for us to see as the reader to help us understand the results of your experiment. And then finally, there's the discussion section. This is like the second bulky part of your experiment. Here it is, we're talking about what you're interpreting from those results. What did you learn? Explain what the results are telling you. Was your hypothesis accepted or rejected? We're not proving anything. We're just telling us if the hypothesis is accepted or rejected. I think that is the big part. I really want you to think about in that discussion section what it means for the reader to have read your study and how can I apply that. So what does it mean for me that you figured out this method of breaking seed dormancy works really well on this seed, or whatever you find out? Why is that important for the reader to know the information? So that's where that discussion section comes in. And then finally, you're going to have that references section. Remember, it needs to be in APA format, okay? And then it also needs to be alphabetical order. Make sure you are using trusted sources. Wikipedia is not one. You can start in Wikipedia, and then as you go down, they will list some sources down there. Some of those can turn out to be good sources. So you can start there, but then you need to use the sources at the bottom and go to those and read that information that they provide from that source. But do not use Wikipedia or non-peer-reviewed sites, okay? I think that's really it. Remember, this is just, you're going to spend the entire semester writing formal lab reports in each unit, and that's going to help get you practice and get you set up to write this big one at the end. So while it is the same format as your formal lab report, it's going to be far more extensive than each lab report. So there is an example formal lab report under the How the Course Works section. So you can use that to look at as your guideline. Please remember, when you are doing anything with scientific names, this would include your seeds, that you are italicizing it, and the first word should be capitalized, the second one should not. And after the first time you write it, you can abbreviate it with the first letter of the first word in capital with a period, and then the second letter, but still italicized, or the second word, I'm sorry, still italicized. I hope that I cleared up any questions for you about the experiment so far. Right now, you should be working in your groups, coming up with a hypothesis and an experimental setup, so that you guys know exactly what you're going to be doing. If you are not participating in the group, then you're just going to end up doing whatever your group decides on. So if you really want to have some kind of say in what's going to happen, then you need to be participating and helping your group out. But otherwise, you're just going to end up doing exactly whatever they come up with. So be an active group member. And if you have questions, please make sure you email or call. Thanks, guys.